So if you guys will just take a minute or two to just tell us the first part of your story, that would be awesome.
Okay. So I grew up in a broken home. My parents divorced when I was young. My mom was an alcoholic, and so my childhood was just kind of unstable and uncertain. Um, and I just felt very alone
Hmm.
as a child. Um, but my grandparents did take me to church faithfully, so I did grow up knowing Jesus. Um, Things did get better. I went to go live with my dad, and my mom did get sober when I was 9. Um, and so there was a lot of happy memories growing up as well. But I continued to just stay sad. And so I just remember as a little girl, um, I found a lot of comfort in singing. Um, Singing by myself, singing alone, in my room, mostly to just a lot of breakup songs. I really didn't understand them or what they were really talking about, but they
I
were
love it.
sad. And that's how I related to those songs. And I remember there was this time when it was like a children's camp thing that they had, and this guy named Tommy Toombs, if anybody went to a Tommy Toombs thing back in the day,
Got a few
um,
nods, huh?
he did like a reenactment of Jesus carrying the cross. And I remember just bawling my eyes out. I was 9 years old. I was so sad just watching this man imitate Jesus, carrying the cross, the burden that he was carrying, the pain that he was going through, and the suffering that he was enduring. And even though I didn't quite understand what was happening and why he was carrying the cross, I could identify with the suffering at such a young age. So, yeah, that's where I just continued to just have this sadness, and it started to come out. I started to act out as I got older, and when I was in my school years, suffered with depression and self-injury, and just really wanted attention and wanted to feel worthy and accepted, and then just started seeking out other things to kind of take away the sadness that I was experiencing.
Yeah, thanks. You're up, sir.
Awesome. So my childhood, I did come from a broken home in that respect. My parents were a little broken themselves. I'm damaged goods. They come from a twisted home. I kind of had one when I was a kid. They both had mental disorders, and so I wasn't well socialized. They aren't social at all. They haven't had friends for over 10 years. And during my lifetime, they've only had a few friends that they saw very infrequently. Um, and I don't know. I tried when I was a kid to live up to their expectations to be validated, and I did well at first. But by the time I was getting to 8 years old, I wasn't able to get that anymore. I wasn't measuring up, and everything I tried, I couldn't get there. And I would ask, hey, well, can we do it this way? Can we try it this way? And I was trying to learn and grow, and all it was no, no, no. And then so I said, okay, well then I'll just ask questions. So I started asking questions. Well, why is the sky blue? How does it work? Sometimes I got a good answer, but for the most part, they didn't know the answers to the questions I was asking, and they just BS'd me and and just shined me on and said, hey, look, we're too busy, we're too busy for you. Go do so. Can't you see I'm busy? Go do something else. And so the most I knew of my dad was behind a newspaper or a football game, and. Anyway, so I was in a claustrophobic space where I wasn't able to grow. I wasn't able to move forward, go left, forward, backwards. I wasn't able to go anywhere. And there was like a spirit of lethargy that's in my house that at 8 years old, I was like, I can't buy into this for 10 more years and stay here and just rot, and hope things are going to get better. And I had inside me a fire, the drive to just want to adventure and to grow and to learn, to experience life for myself. And my parents were like compressing me and holding me back. So at 8 years old, I knew that I had to get out as soon as possible. And I was discouraged from communicating what I was thinking, communicating what I was feeling, communicating what I was going through, and definitely discouraged from the path of discovery that I was inclined to walk. And I really wanted to run that path, not walk it. I had a lot I wanted to do by the time I was 18, and it was just not going to happen there. And so it was like an explosion, and I tried running away. I kept trying to run away, but when I was 8, and it took several times, and I was trying to stay away, and I couldn't do it, and I finally learned how to do it. 15 I was out of the house and living on the street, and but during that time between 8 and 15, I was learning a lot of deception, how to live a double or triple life, for my parents, in front of my parents, and it was extremely discouraging because I didn't get support or encouragement, and which is what I really needed as a kid. And I put that out there just to say that those of you that have kids, if you haven't learned it already, I'm a slow learner. I'm really slow. And I'm learning it with my kids, that they're not necessarily going to be the way that I want them to be, and things aren't going to go at the pace or the way that I want them to do. And like right now, my older son, he likes video games. And we don't even have a video game console, but he likes video games. And it's like, oh my gosh, and he's so easily distracted. And it's like he likes dinosaurs and sharks. And it's extremely difficult. I see, how difficult it is to parent, and so my challenge is to support him and to love him and encourage him, even though, I want better things for him or different things for him, And so anyway, I just put that out there, that was very necessary for me. Had I been encouraged and supported, I would have walked a different path.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and this is so interesting because yesterday I got to hang out with a few young people, and that was something that was a theme, right? They were early 20s, and they said, "You know how many times that I've heard my family tell me they were proud of me?" And most of us were like, "Oh, they understand that." He said, twice. And that was something, thankfully, that I was taught growing up was, hey, your kids need to hear a few things. I'm proud of you, I love you, and I'm sorry. Well, thankfully, God has given me lots and lots of opportunities to apologize to all those things. My son is sitting right here. He will attest how many times he's heard me say I'm sorry, and probably a few more coming, right? But it's just something that's so powerful. And both of you guys experienced so many different things, good, bad, ugly, and different before the age of 14 and 15. But what happened next for both of you and just a disclaimer, they didn't know each other. You're going to get to that part later, but their stories are very similar and intertwined. At 14 and 15, you guys were introduced to drugs and the lifestyle that brings and the lifestyle of being in addiction. And so take a couple minutes and share that part of your story with all of us.
So this is the BC part, the before Christ. And things did escalate quickly as I was just trying to find things to numb the pain and fill a void, and started using drugs at 14, started smoking pot. By the time I was 21, I was a meth addict. So everything in between, from cocaine to crack and heroin and anything I could get my hands on. So there was just that progression, just always looking for a bigger and better high. Nothing was ever satisfying, was fixing it. Nothing ever fixed what I was seeking out to fix. So that's when I was 21 years old, and I was a drug addict. And I was a meth addict that you would, you see on TV.
All right.
It's sad to think about how sad and how bad things were. But But I basically was just a shell of a person, living off smoke, cigarettes, pot, meth, like literally just lived off smoke and the occasional pals. But I eat a lot of pals now.
Yes.
Glory to God,
Amen. For those of you watching online, you really need to come to East Tennessee to get some
pals
cheddar
is where
rounds.
it's at.
Yes,
Lots
ma'am.
of pals. And so there was just, I was just a shell. It was like the living dead, I was living in a living hell. And I literally thought that's what life was about. And then just the whole aspect of the drug lifestyle and what you do to get drugs. It doesn't matter. You do whatever it takes. You betray whoever you can. It doesn't matter. You don't care about anyone that you love. So there's that whole lifestyle to a drug addiction. So basically, I was a slave to the drugs. I did whatever the drugs told me to do. I was obeying the flesh, the lusts of my flesh. And at this point, too, in this whole walk, I completely lost my faith in God as well. So I literally did not believe in Jesus anymore. I had completely lost faith. And so I know looking back that was just Satan's way. This whole path that I was on was his whole point was to blind me, and just to do whatever he wished. Mm-hmm. My mom's crying. I don't want you to cry, Mama.
All right, Jason, let's hear yours.
All right. So I've been homeless 7 years of my life total. At this point, I was homeless for 3 years. And I was burning the candle at both ends with a blowtorch, literally. And I found my God in a glass pipe, and I had never experienced anything as good as that at 15 years old. In all that I experienced. I went down that path, and I sold my soul. Anything I could, anything I had to do, could do to keep coming up, I would continue doing that. I slept about 3 to 5 days a month, but I was awake 24/7, lying, cheating, stealing, any opportunity that I had to continue to move forward on the path that I was walking. And it was that the old school method, and to kind of keep you up for a month. And in it, I experienced just true emptiness and death, just the end of life. I heard about happiness and joy, and I definitely wasn't living in that. And we have an acronym that says, joy is Jesus, others, yourself, and addiction is yourself, others, and Jesus. The thing is you just never get over yourself, and you neglect others, and you ignore Jesus. And then that's the end of it. The basis of all addiction, whether it's chemical or anything else, is the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life.
Yeah. When you think, too, those three things, if you've heard those things, and it comes from a verse in 1 John, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life it's the foundation of all sin, right? Of all struggle, of all pain, is we see these things, right? Any of the things, we're like, I want those. And then we pursue stuff, and we pursue different avenues of life, but it all comes back to the pride of life, right? That was the original sin, right? That's what kicked Satan out of heaven. I want to be God. I want everything God deserves, I desire. And so you start to think about that, and we start to live our life in such a way, right? We start to say, well, I deserve that, or I need that, or that was created for me. And what Jason and Rachel hope to see is like that was the lifestyle that they were trapped in. And we're going to talk about this more in a minute, but it's a lie, right? It's a lie, and we know that, right? If you've ever spent time in Scripture, we know it doesn't work out for anyone who desires to be God, right? That's not what we were created to be. We were created to be children of God, to serve God, not to be God. And so Jason said something that was he said a lot of awesome things. Like I said, I can't tell you enough how great their story was. But as I was reading through their different testimonies, Jason talked about minor addictions. So often when we come together, when you think of the word addict, you think of drugs. Maybe you're like, oh, I'm addicted to caffeine, ha, ha, ha. But he talks about something with minor addictions, and I would love for you to share that with us.
Yeah, we're not going to get into like all the nitty gritty, but with all sin, it degrades your morality. It degrades your mental state. It degrades your reality. There's just so much that it terrorizes. And to this day, I've been struggling with minor addictions and monstrous addictions, and God has come through and saved me from a lot of them. But to this day, they still survive on scraps.
Mm-hmm.
And they're always looking for an opportunity to live out in me and to take advantage and to feed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I talked about, like Justin was saying, addiction. You think of Pookie with a crack pipe, in the alley or something. You think of addiction. And I've been in addiction, not only addiction ministry, for 2 decades, but I've been in addiction all my life, and I've seen the minor ones and I've seen the major ones and everything in between. And it's a lot more prevalent in everybody's life than anybody wants to admit. And you might be sitting here saying, I don't have addictions, I don't have issues, and in recovery, the first step to recovery is admitting that you have a problem. And it's one of the hardest things to do. A lot of people never get past that point. Everybody is struggling with an addiction of some form or another at some level or some degree. And, you can see it in social media. When's the last time you were at a restaurant and you saw people having a conversation at their table, instead of just looking at their phones, I'm surprised anybody can walk around safely in the street without getting hit by a car.
True statement.
It is insane. And, and it's interesting that term social media, you think about it, and it's like, what's the media? Whether it's some written words, some videos, some pictures. Well, I see no photography quality there. I see no videography quality there. I see no written quality either. And what's social about it? People raising their flags, and saying, I'm right and you suck. Whose side are you on?
Yeah.
Hit the like button. I don't know. If that's what social is, I'm not missing out on anything.
That's right.
And I haven't found it to be anything positive. Honestly, I haven't seen anything positive from it. And really, what I've found it's more of like therapy. We feel good when we do it. I watch people do this. Watch this. They go like this. It's freaking weird. Like they just they cuddle themselves and then start scrolling. It is such a trip. And I'm telling you, man, it's not social media, guys. That's delusion therapy, man. That's to keep us. That's helping us just believe the lie of the fantasy. Just to continue believing the lie of the fantasy that's being propagated. And then they're advertising, man, you want to get into the whole AI and all the other stuff with it, man, it's crazy, just how much is going on there. But most people spend their whole life feeding their little monsters little treats, and the whole time just laughing it off while being comforted by memes that were shared by friends they don't even know. Who wrote those?
Mm-hmm.
Who's comforting you in your morbid mediocrity? Saying you're okay. You need a break. You deserve this. Like, dude, whew. It's there, and there's a lot more than just social media. that's out there. This whole world is calling to put us into bondage. Casting Crowns wrote a song called Waiting for the Night to Fall, and it's about the old man. But he says he knows he will never have your soul, but he will gladly rob you blind. When you're feasting at his table, he will tie your hands and numb your mind. He will take you farther than you want to go and keep you longer than you want to stay. And it will cost you more than you ever thought you'd pay. That's the power that a minor addiction can have over your life. And that can be devastating.
Yeah. And we put those lyrics up here so you could really think about it, because anybody who's ever been trapped in a sin or stuck in a struggle, man, it's so true, right? And this old man is talking about the devil, right? He knows he will never have your soul, but he will gladly rob you of every opportunity that you have to share of God's story, to share of his goodness, his grace, and his mercy. And I love this imagery while you're feasting, right? It's not just eating dinner. It's not just having a little snack. Like, this is how my mind works. I'm picturing Robin Williams and Hook, right? The food, feast, and fight. Like, it's a big distraction. That's what comes through my mind. And he says, but while you're feasting, he's going to tie your hands and numb your mind. Like, you don't even know. Most of us, if I said, hey, let's go to eat, and I said, but you can't use your hands, how embarrassing of a meal is that going to be for you? You ever had mashed potatoes without a fork? You know what I mean? And so you think about this, we look ridiculous. Like, you go to lunch today, just eat without your hands. Just bend over, take your face right into your plate, and see, just look around at the people who look at you. But we would be like, oh my gosh, what is that person doing? But while we're sitting at this table, struck in sin and struggling, we think, oh, we're okay. And he says, we'll take you farther, we'll keep you longer. And then when you go to pay your tab, you're like, whoa, right? It's like food prices today. We go to Walmart, get 10 things, $187, please. And that's the whole point of sin, is it will keep you longer than when you want to stay. But that's one of the most beautiful things about God, right? Is while you're sitting at that table, he comes and he's like, hey, I have something far greater than this, right? Something that's so much better. And he steps into that mess and pursues you and says, come follow me. And you're like, well, wait a second, my hands are tied. My mind, it's numb. I'm not done eating here yet. And what does he say? Come, follow me. It never changes. Come, follow me. He doesn't pick you up. He doesn't drag you. He doesn't force you. He just says, come, follow me. I have a more excellent way. And both of you, right, as we were moving along in this story, you guys talked about hope, and you talked about how hope literally brought you guys through this story. And so if you'll take a minute and just talk about the impact hope had in both of your lives while you were stuck.
So after 3 years as a junkie, I started becoming hopeless. It was like mortally hopeless. I wasn't able to see hope in humanity. I saw the manipulation, the lying, the selfishness, and it was the same exact thing that was inside of me. And I was like, what's the point? You know, where's the hope in a life filled with people like this? And what am I worth if that's all I am? And I tried to work the equation out. You know, I was thinking about it. It was months. I spent like 3 months trying to work this equation out without equaling death. And I worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And one night the solution was final. You know, and it was I'm checking out. I can't figure this out. I can't find hope anywhere. So I went to an abandoned strip mall and I sat down on one of the suites and decided to finish my life. And God came to me in that moment and said, "If you're done with your life, I'll take it." And in that moment, He showed me, and it was people from church. It was crazy. And these people used to judge me and be like, "Dude, we don't want you hanging around with him." They would tell their kids, "We don't want you hanging around with him." Like, they would keep their kids. They would give me looks. They would judge me. And those very people, God had transformed in that 3-year period and put love in their heart for me. And God showed me love through those people and how he had been loving me for 3 months through those people. And he gave me hope.
Yeah.
God gave me hope.
Yeah, and you think about this. I don't want you to miss the part of this line, right? If you are finished with your life, give it to me. And I've never thought about that. You guys know my background. I've worked with students. I've been in that stuckness, that disaster with people, and never once have I thought about that to say, hey, you don't have hope, right? You no longer want to live your life. We'll give it to somebody else, right? Let someone else be the Lord over your life. And I was like, man, I shared it with Chris. I was reading it. I was tearing up, and Chris can attest to this. I was like, dude, you got to hear this. You got to hear this. You got to hear this. And Chris sat, Chris, he's big, loud. He doesn't cry. He's not that guy. He was in tears, and he was like, man, that's amazing. You have to share that. I was like, it's coming. It's coming. I promise it's coming. And so you think about that wherever you are in your life. Well, I don't know. If that's you and you're struggling with that, man, give your life to Jesus. Give your life to Jesus because he's going to keep hope alive, right? That's what Jesus does. And without hope, we don't have a reason to live. That's why it's such a powerful thing, right? Our life is no longer ours. It's about living for God. And there's so much freedom in that, which we're going to talk about in a sec. But before we do, Rach, you tell us about hope in your life.
Okay, so this is when but God steps in.
There we go.
But God steps in. So at 21, I was a drug addict. This was my life. This wasn't the plan I had for my life, what my family and everyone, the dreams that I had was not to be a drug addict. And I was stuck. I was trapped. And this is where I was at. I was looking at all my other friends. They were chasing their dreams, and I was stuck in a nightmare. I had heard, or someone gave me a Bible that said I needed to read it. And I opened it one night. I had a lot of questions. I had had a friend that had been shot and died, and I really questioned eternity at that point and what happens when you die. That was one reason why I opened the Bible. I was looking for hope. I was looking for a way out. I was trying to find out what my future was supposed to be because it wasn't supposed to be this. And that night, God revealed himself through his word. It was just him revealing himself and the power of his word. And there's that proverb that train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is older, he won't depart from it. Mm-hmm. And that came true for me because everything that I had been taught as a child came flooding back as, oh, this is the truth. This is real. God is real and God is alive. And I had so much peace. I had a peace that I had never experienced, that peace in that chaos that surpassed all understanding. And so that was the new path that I had started on. I continued reading my Bible. I was still on drugs because I didn't know how to get out of that, but I still continued reading the Bible. And I started feeding the Spirit. I started listening to a lot of Bible studies by Charles Stanley. My grandmother had, recorded a bunch of them on tape, and I just watched those all the time, read my Bible, used drugs. But the more that I stayed in God's Word and was feeding the Spirit, the less I obeyed my flesh, the less sin I was doing. And it really did give me the strength to ultimately get help. My life verse for a very long time was submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, you double-minded. Humble yourselves in the Lord, and he will lift you up. And it was this moment in my life where I chose to surrender. I chose to surrender. I chose to submit. I said, whatever you want to do with my life, you take it. I don't care. I'll do whatever you want. And he delivered me. When I chose to surrender, he delivered. He took it all. He took all the junk. Where am I? Yeah, he took all the junk.
Yep.
That's it.
Okay.
Perfect.
Perfect.
And the next step for me was a Christ-centered rehab. That's what I was willing to do. Yeah.
And here's the thing that I love. This is just an aside. You guys who read the Bible and know, have you ever thought about this? God always says, I'm the God of Israel, right? And if you break that down in the East Tennessee twang, God is real. You ever thought about that? Like, God is real. And so often we have all of these stories, but I just think of that as just it's a little thing. I could be way wrong. I could get to heaven and God be like, why are you butchering Aramaic? I'd be like, I never learned it. I'm sorry. Right? But I just think it's so cool that every time I see that in scripture, it's another little reminder that he's real. And those verses are from James. And I just want to point this out to you before we move on, right? It says, if you draw near to God, what happens? He will draw near to you. And we think of this word submit, and it's such an ugly word. And it's so, we're going to talk about that in a minute. It's not. It's really quite beautiful and freeing. And he says, and resist the devil. And for all of us in different places, that looks different. For some of us, that's hey, I'm done. I'm out. I'm never doing that again. And you go. And for some of us, that's the struggle. Well, hey, I was reading my Bible. Hey, I was pursuing Jesus while being a drug addict. And we are so quick to be like, that person doesn't really love God. That person doesn't really God. Or Jason's story. These people literally kicked me out, don't hang out with me, don't spend time with my kids. But they were the very same people that God used to save his life. And so all that to say, no matter where you are on that journey, right? No matter where you are, there's always a chance for you to draw near to God. Why? Because he is longing to draw near to you. And so when we look out, you guys hear us say this all the time, right? Church people always say this, come as you are, come as you are, come as you are. But then when you get here, they're like, whoa, you're too ugly and broken for me. Please get out. And if that's your thought process, we need to hang out, because before I ever kick someone out of a church that's like that, you know who's going to say, see you, bye? That person. Because this was made for broken people, and we want to be a place. We don't just say that. We don't just put it on the wall. We don't just get cute tattoos that say that. We want to live that out. We want to walk through brokenness with each and every one of you. And they're like, that's a painful process. It sure is. That's why we do it together. That's a tedious and tiresome process. Yes, it is. That's why we do it together. Right? We don't want you to build up walls and to keep these secrets and to start holding everything in. Why? Because that's a lonely and isolating path. And so don't ever believe the lie that you've done too many bad things or that you're too far gone, right? All you have to do is it can be a shuffle, right? A small little step. Because as you draw near to God, he draws near to you. So Rach, tell us what happened next in your story.
So I went to rehab, and this was a Christ-centered rehab, so they poured the love of God upon me. I was in Bible study every day. We learned how to serve others instead of our flesh. And so it really taught me how to walk with God there, how to worship God, put a new song in my heart, how to love him and how to love others. I went as a patient through the program, but then I was asked to run the women's program. So I was in the program for about 5 years, and that was the regeneration. There needs to be the renewal of the mind. You know, there's a lot of just refreshing and renewal that our whole body, spirit, and soul has to go through when you suffer and be in such a dark place for a long time. And of course, this is where Jason and I met. And so
Let's go.
He ended up
Wonder how that's worked out for you guys.
right. He ended up he'd been in the program before I was, so he was there in ministry for a while, but this is where our future really started to come to fruition. Like, I do have a future, you know, I do have a hope.
Yeah.
And it's where, God really changed us. We became those new creations where the old things have passed away, and behold, all things become new.
Yeah. And Rachel used this verse from Romans 12:2. Like I said, if you've been around faith or Jesus for a while, here's what that verse says. It says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And this is something that Rachel shared in her testimony that she sent to me. She said, when you live years in sinful depravity, it takes years sometimes for God to renew your mind. And in some cases, you just have to step out of that world. And it tied in beautifully to Jason. So I want Jason to share just for a couple minutes about time from his perspective.
Yeah, I would always run into people, 60 day program, 60-day program. Just, we're just going to do the program, 60 days, I'm just here for 60 days. And it's like, what? For the first time in your life, you're going to follow the rules? All of a sudden, it's, 60 days. 60 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just because some program says 60 days is how long it is, And I knew when I got there that Oh, it was going to be more than 60 days. And I just surrendered to God. I said, however, because I have been to rehabs before, and I'd actually seen some of the people that were there at that time before. And I had seen the work that God had done in their life, from being like totally corrupt to being a man of God. Mm-hmm. And I said, God, it was like over a 5-year period. And I said, God, if you can do that in my life in 5 years, I'll give you anything you want for, I'll surrender myself to you for 5 years. I'll be in a program for 5 years. And I ended up being in there a total of 15.
15 years?
A total of 15. And just like Rachel, I started out as a client and then, started working
Work there, yeah.
in there. Anyway, so time, time's not our friend. It's especially when we're trying to take advantage of it, and when we're trying to get out of a mess and trying to work our way out. We're used to the fast food, the quick fix. I can have it Uber. I can have it DoorDashed. Like we're used to that kind of lifestyle, that instantaneous lifestyle. And unfortunately, like Justin and Rachel are talking about, it was years of going in the wrong direction. We've gone so hard and so long in the wrong direction. It's going to take a long time to fix it. It's not like normal people who are just going through life, and they're starting at zero. We've been going in the wrong direction. When we come to God, we're not at zero. We're coming to God with debt. And so, and nobody wants to start over from the beginning. Nobody likes the sound of that. And it's even worse when you have debt on top of that. And it's a long road to zero. It's a long road to zero. And it's even longer to glory.
And isn't that the beautiful part of Jesus saying, I paid it all? Right, no matter if you're at 0, -10, or -10,011, right? He's like, it's paid in full. It's paid in full. And so I want you to talk about for a second, you said something so powerful. You said you have to dethrone yourself.
Yeah, so the road to recovery, it requires drastic measures. Like I said, you heard how long that I was in a program. I wasn't just in the program leading because I had overcome everything. I was still receiving. I'm still recovering. I wouldn't even say that. A lot of things I haven't even got to zero yet. And this is 20 years later. We've had to submit and sacrifice and give up. Rachel stopped wearing makeup for a year. I eat bread and water for 40 days. We've done so many crazy things. We could just go on and tell you just like all the things that we've done, but.
Trying to get freedom, yeah.
Yeah, trying to find freedom from all the bondage. But I had to come to the understanding that I was unable to help myself. And I didn't even know what help looked like. And if I did, I wouldn't even be in the mess I was in. I wouldn't have still been in the mess I was in. And you really have to dethrone yourself. Because the way down is the way up.
Yep.
And you can't fill you have to empty to be filled. You can't fill what is already full. And we weren't made to be the gods of our own existence. Mm-hmm. We were made to serve. That's why we're so cuddly in our slavery.
Mm-hmm.
We were made to serve. We really were. We were made to serve God. And if we're not serving him, we're going to serve someone.
Yep.
You have to unlearn everything, even give your rights up as a human, and learn to receive your rights as a child of God.
Amen.
True freedom is really found in submission and humility, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't sound right. Freedom's in the potato chip aisle, right? Mm-hmm. Look what the potato chips have done for me.
That's right.
Yeah. The reality of our slavery is the secret we're all trying to keep from each other.
Yeah, and I love that, right? I love that imagery. You guys know that slavery is the secret that we're all trying to keep from each other, right? So many of us, right? So many of us feel like we have this part of our life that we have to hide, right? We can't be our true self. We have to hide this part, or we have to hide this story about who we are. And what are those, right? They're wounds and they're hurts. And what happens if people start to get too close, right? We ninja them. No, you can't touch that. It's still sore. It's still open. It's still raw and real. And maybe it stems from fear. Maybe it stems from control. But as long as it's a secret, you're going to be enslaved to it. And what happens is we believe we are free, and we're like, no, it's not enslaving me. I'm choosing to hold it back, right? And if that's your thought, stand up and share it right now. Oh, interesting, right? Anybody here got some secrets? They're like, I might raise my hand. Yeah, right? We'll say it. Well, I got some. Go ahead and share it. We're waiting. Oh, I'm just choosing. I don't want to hurt other people. I want to protect the people that I love. But you know what that is? It's a lie, right? Because if we weren't enslaved to it, it wouldn't control us, but it controls us. And so what happens is you start simple, share it with God. We're like, I can't tell other people. Share it with him. I don't know how. It's real easy. You just talk like this. And then you start asking him, hey, give me one, give me a few, give me a community that I can share these struggles with, right? And then what happens is those wounds, they turn to scars, and those scars, they tell a story. You guys knew, my shampoo bottle and my cool metal bed, like those are funny stories that we laugh at now. It doesn't hurt for you to touch me in the forehead unless every single one of you came up here and done it. Then it might get a little annoying. But that's the whole point of a scar, is I don't have to dodge, I don't have to weave, I don't have to protect. And actually, if I try to dodge from you poking that scar, you're going to hurt me. You're going to poke me in the eye, right? And so that's the beauty of that, is finding these people that you can be authentic, that you can be vulnerable with. And that was one of my favorite things that Kaylee said last week. She said, it's worth the vulnerability to have community. And man, if there's a prayer that I could pray over you for the rest of this year and next year, it's that you would find a place where you can be vulnerable with a community. And so what I want you guys to do is, I guess, take this last minute and just share with us your closing thoughts. What do you want to leave the people with?
Okay. So, I look back at my life and question why I had to go through such ugly, dark things at such a young age, when I really didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't really, a lot of things, I question it. I question why, right? Why did I have to go through this? Why did I have to experience so much darkness? And I know God's hand was upon me that whole time. He never left me. He was there. And he allowed these things to happen. He did allow certain things to happen, but he knew he would only allow the things that would bring me to a surrender, that would bring me to a relationship with God, that would bring about his perfect plan of salvation for my life, that would hopefully touch other people's lives. So I trust in God's sovereignty, even in the mess, even in the pain, and even in the ugly, that he was there, and it was part of his plan for my life. And so, I'm thankful for my parents that had to go through that, and they endured it with me. They never gave up. My mom was baptized in the ocean last year. We've got to experience some really beautiful God moments, but there's some hurts, there's some scars that only God can heal, that only God can take away. Yeah. And I am going to, just throw a thankful, that I'm thankful to Jason while I have this time.
Do it.
Because I think back on his life and I'm like, whoa, I don't even know. I wasn't there. I only have stories, and I can only imagine how dark it was for him. And I'm so thankful that he chose to surrender. I'm so thankful that he gave his life to God, because I'm reaping the benefits of it still today.
Amen.
Like our life today is blessed. We're very, just very thankful. And I also just trust in the redeeming power of the blood of the Lamb. I bank on it. I know that his death on the cross and the blood that he shed has completely healed us. And when the enemy wants to come in and throw shame and guilt and try to throw us back into that circle, I know that I've been bought out of the hand of the enemy. He can't touch me anymore. No. And I truly bank on the blood of the Lamb. Amen. And his redeeming power. He's
Yes,
redeemed
ma'am.
us both.
I love it. You're up, Mr. Baker.
God's word tells us that not only how to have personal spiritual health, but how to thrive as a body. And in Acts 2:42 through 47 is one of my favorite scriptures, and it says, "And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship and the breaking of the bread and in prayers, and fear came upon every soul." And I tell you, I want that fear so bad. I want that reverence for God that doesn't just blow him off like he doesn't exist and go into the bathroom and look at porn and drag him in there with me. And I want a reverence for him that in all my thoughts, that I think that I'm considerate of a God who loves me in all of my words that I speak and everything that I do, that I'm considerate of the God who saved me and who lives inside of me and who doesn't just kill his creation for doing something like that to him. And it is an amazing love that we are loved with. And it says, "And many wonders and signs were done by the apostles, and all that believed were together, and they had all things in common, and sold their possessions and goods, and parted them to all men as every man had need. And they, continuing daily with one accord in the temple and breaking bread from house to house, did eat their food with gladness and singleness of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to the church daily such as should be saved."
Amen.
You know, in our culture, we're busy, and I get it. You know, we have too much going on. We got our families, we got, careers and everything else in between, and, that goes on. And I just reconcile myself to the belief that that was how it was going to be for the rest of my life. That I would just basically die a mediocre husband, a mediocre father, and a mediocre brother. And that a community like that didn't really exist here, and that I would just have to wait to get to heaven to appreciate that. And I just want to just say something real quick about that. You could go to church, come late, leave early, you can read your Bible at home and have your relationship with God and have your family, but unless all these things are at play, there's not wholeness. It's not wholly healthy. You can be so much more. There's so much more that God has for us and has for us together. We're not dragons. We're sheep. Lizards, reptiles. They're solitary creatures. They go out on their own. Sheep are in a herd. They're together. And in this world, it's the way of the dragon. That's the way of the world, and it is calling us to be on our own, to climb the ladder, to get to the top, and it's lonely at the top. And that's not what God's called us to. And I know that every design of this place is designed to work against herd living, and drive you to lizard living. But God has called us to the way of the Lamb. And anyway, 2 years ago, we came here. And it was weird because we had looked online.
Yeah.
We had been looking at going to a different church. And honestly, the church we were going to, I was just taking a break. I really was taking a break from ministry. We had been serving hardcore from the moment our pillow left our head. From the moment we left our pillow to the moment our head hit the pillow. I mean, it was constant. It was being lied to, being deceived, just like constant, like craziness. Addictions ministry is crazy, and I was just taking a break, checking out, and really took too long of a break. And God started working in 2020 in my heart, especially when Kanye West got saved, and started using that. Anyway, long story short, we came here, and we've got to experience fellowship and sharing meals. And God using his gifts through us and to us with vulnerable people and being vulnerable to other people. Here we've actually got to experience community. And the craziest thing is we've been married for 13 years, and I have never turned to my wife. In the last 2 years, I've turned to my wife and said so many times, we are a part of the coolest church ever. And I have
That'll
never,
preach.
I have never said that to her, ever. Anyway, yeah, like I said, this is the first time we've ever really experienced community. And God has given us something that's been missing from our life this whole time. And finally experiencing freedom to actually just be myself and not live up to expectations and pressures and empowerment. And I'm just sorry for not knowing how to express my gratitude to all of you for allowing us to be a part of the community with you. And please disregard that look of I'm better than you on my face. It's really not true. It's an old residual thing. If I just talk to you for a few minutes, I will idolize you and look up to you and be totally blessed to just be in the same room with you.
Appreciate that. So to wrap this up, the band, you guys can come back up. We're going to pray with the bakers. You guys thank them for me one more time. They're going to, I haven't asked them this, so way to be put on the spot, but they're going to be up here if you want to pray with them, just like every other week. Be a couple other people up here that you can come, and anything, right? Anything that you are trying to overcome, we want to walk through that with you. I don't want to miss what Jason said, right? And me and Rebecca made this joke last week. I will be the first person to stand up and tell you that I am not perfect. However, I love a guy who is. And I will be broken. I will say inappropriate things at the right time and the wrong time. I'm just telling you. But we will do one thing always. We will show up. And we will walk through whatever you need to walk through, whatever that looks like. And when we get tired, there's 100 other people here that'll say, hey, let me tag in for a minute. Let me tag in for a minute while you rest up, pray up, so you can get back out here and do the same thing. And what's so amazing, right, is as we read that stuff from Acts chapter 2, people were getting saved daily. Numbers were being added daily. What were they doing? They were doing the exact thing Jesus called each and every one of us to do. And it's not to be alone, right? To get together, to bear one another's burdens, to break down walls, to share stories and be like, oh, gosh, you're not perfect, me either. Let's go celebrate that. Oh, you've messed up? Man, let me tell you about how I messed up. And we're not going to celebrate that part, but we're going to celebrate what God's going to do with us despite of us. And then we're going to share those stories because we're not perfect. We all screw up. We all mess up. And so don't believe that lie that you have to be perfect here. Right? If you're perfect here, then we need to talk because I think I missed the second coming. Right? So you don't have to be perfect here, but we just want to pursue Jesus together. Amen?